servanthood. Let me put it this way. To get ahead, put others first. You see, a true leader serves people, serves their best interest, and in so doing will not always be popular, may not always impress, but because true leaders are motivated by loving concern rather than a desire for personal glory, they are willing to pay the price. This is not in your notes, but it's something I wrote down in my notes I wanted to pass on to you. Servanthood is not about position or skill. It's about attitude. You have undoubtedly met people in the service positions who have poor attitudes towards servanthood. The rude worker at the government agency, the waiter who can't be bothered with taking your order, the store clerk who talks on the phone with a friend instead of helping you. So what does a servant leader look like? Number one, puts others ahead of his own agenda. That's what a servant looks like. It's one of my people principles. It's the patience principle. The patience principle says basically, the man who goes alone can start the day, but he who travels with another must wait until the other is ready. Let me tell you the difference between a leader and most people. A leader never finishes the finish line alone. Their goal has never been to be the first one across the finish line because they realize that that's not a leader's responsibility. The leader says, I'm not going to finish across the line alone. I'm going to take people with me. And so the leader understands this servanthood principle of, I will go slower in my life so that I can take more people on the journey. I will give up some of my own personal conveniences because I want to add value to others. Classic example of that. A couple of years ago, I was in Seattle doing a leadership conference for a corporation. And the other speaker was Jim Whittaker. And Jim Whittaker was the first American to ever climb Mount Everest. And I thought, oh, this will be so much fun because we're going to have lunch together. So I had my list of questions because I learned a long time ago, if you go to lunch with somebody, you're either talking or listening. You're either sharing what you know or you're learning from somebody else. And so I decided a long time ago, whenever I'm with somebody, I'm going to ask as many questions as I can because that's where the learning goes. And so I sat down with Jim Whittaker, and before he could say anything, I said, I got to ask you a question. I said, of all of your accomplishments, because I said, I know you have been on top of every major mountain in the world. Of all of your personal accomplishments, which one fulfilled you the very most? Now, I thought he would say, I personally thought he'd say, the first time I went to the top of Mount Everest, because he's been up there several times. That's what I thought he'd say. He said, this will surprise you. He said, what has given me the most fulfillment is not any time that I have climbed to the top of the mountain by myself. And he went through the different mountains he'd been on top of. He said, that was wonderful. But he said, what gives me the most fulfillment of all my mountain climbing is I have taken more people to the top of Mount Everest than any other climber. And he said, do you know how fulfilling it is to take people to a level that you know they would have never been able to get on their own? Now that's servanthood. That's the person who understands that what you really want to do is put others ahead of your own personal agenda. Or the exchange principle. Again, it's a great principle. Instead of putting others in their place, put yourself in their place. Okay. So a servant leader puts others ahead of his own agenda. Number two, a servant leader possesses the security to serve. Last week I was in St. Louis doing a conference for about 1,000 people on how to develop teams. It was a teamwork conference taken from my book, The 17 Laws of Teamwork. And I was talking to them about how do you know that you have a team that's going to be effective? So I was trying to give them some tangible things that they could kind of get their hands around. And what I did for them, I want to do for you now, because I think this is so key in this area of servanthood and also developing people, developing yourself. Here's what I said to them. I was talking to them about team players. I'm going to talk to you about just an individual for a moment. A person must be secure enough. Remember, that's one of the qualities of a great leader, security. A person must be secure enough to stretch. And a person must be secure enough to serve. And they are opposites. Are you with me? In other words, I told them, if you're developing a team of people around you, I was talking about their inner circle a little bit. I said, you want to get people that are secure enough that they'll stretch, they'll get out of their comfort zone. In other words, they'll reach. They'll do things that are not comfortable for themselves because they want to grow, they want to learn, they want to get in unexplored territory. So I said, you want to have players on your team that are secure enough that they'll stretch, get out of their comfort zone, but I said you also want to have players that are secure enough that they'll stoop to serve others. Wide apart. One I'm stretching, one I'm serving. But what I know is that the only people that I have ever known to serve gladly other people were people that were secure. You know what I found? Insecure people. They want to make sure they have their power. They want to make sure they have their position. They want to make sure they have their title. They want to make sure they got their office in the corner. Isn't that true? The more secure you are, the more you realize titles don't matter. Where you have your office, that doesn't matter. I can still remember when we were out in San Diego before we moved to Atlanta, and a major national leadership magazine was coming to interview me. And the joke at the office was the fact that I didn't have an office. I didn't have an office. And well, when I went into the office, I'm usually going around talking to people in everybody else's office, and I really didn't have an office because I do most of my work, my writing at home. And so what they had done is they had, if I had to sit down and write down something or something, they had a little office with I'm talking about like it was a closet, really. It was a closet with just, where basically they stacked boxes in it. And so they had a little chair in there and just a little desk for me. And so in this leadership magazine, they came to do their interview on me. In fact, they're doing a feature article on leadership. Linda, my assistant, said, well, John, what are we going to do? I said, just bring them into my office. I kid you not. These two guys came in with their interview and their tape recorders and stuff, and they came into this office, and I said, welcome, glad you're here, come on, sit down, and I had a box for one of them, I had another little chair for the other one, closed the door, and they're kind of putting the tape recorders, getting ready, and plugging stuff in, and they're looking at each other, and they're going nuts. And I played along with it for a little bit, and then I finally said, not what you expected? And they said, not what we expected. And we had a good laugh. And I just shared it with them. Just about everywhere I've ever been, I've given up my office. In fact, the last 4 places I've been, I've given up my office. In fact, we're kind of running out of room where we are right now. And I told them the other day, I said, well, I got that one office. I said, just give it up. Now, here's what I'm saying. Just simple enough. If you're secure, you don't really care about titles. You really don't care about, that stuff absolutely means nothing to you because you know who you are. And if you're a servant and you got a servant's heart, your whole job is to do your very best to add value to other people. In your notes, how we treat others is really a reflection on how we think about ourselves. So a servant leader, number 3, initiates service to others. Here's a people principle, the exercise principle. The exercise principle says the best exercise for strengthening the heart is reaching down and lifting up people. A servant leader, number 4, is not position conscious. Oh, this is one of my favorite people principles. I'm really working on this one. It's called the power down principle. Powerful people show their greatness by treating kindly less powerful people. Whenever I see a person that has power and authority, I always watch how they treat, quote, people of lesser position. You can tell more about the character of a person that's got power and how they treat people of a lesser position than anything else about their character. So let me read this and close this quality. If you really want to become the kind of leader that people want to follow, you will have to settle the issue of servanthood. If your attitude is to be served rather than served, you may be headed for trouble. If this is an issue in your life, then heed this advice. Stop lording over people and start listening to them. Stop role-playing for advancement and start risking for others' benefit. Stop seeking your own way and start serving others. Or as Albert Schweitzer wisely stated, I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I do know. The ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. If you want to lead to the highest level, be willing to serve on the lowest. Or as I say often, you've got to love people more than you love your position.